All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Thirsty Thursday number 30. Bobby just joined us, and Ben's going to be joining us here shortly. We're very excited and honored tonight to have Chief Jerry Tracy from FDMY with us. We're going to talk a little bit of shop tonight. We've got a lot of questions we got to ask him, and I'm sure a lot of pearls of wisdom that are going to come our way, both from him and from Bobby. And we'll give Ben some credit too. He might come up with something good once he gets on. Ben's a little late tonight. He's actually at his Dungeons and Dragons monthly meeting. So as soon as he gets done with that, he'll be back with us. So a couple things before we get started. Again, thanks everybody for tuning in and for our special guest. But we also want to make sure that we acknowledge and recognize what this weekend's going to be, especially on Monday. We have Memorial Day coming up. And a little bit of background on that. Certainly, we look at that as an opportunity to honor and mourn the loss of those U.S. military members that have made the supreme sacrifice. And of course, it's a time for us to get together with family and kind of to kick off the summer in a lot of places. But it didn't become a national holiday until 1971, but it actually started right after the Civil War. So a lot of great history. If you get a chance to look it up and really read up on it a little bit, I think you'll be pretty amazed. Two things, and when Ben comes on a little bit later, I want to go ahead and put their pictures up. But we have people who serve and have a life of service in a lot of different ways. Some of those folks are firefighters and in the military. Some are police officers and in the military. And we kind of go back and forth. And again, these people lived a life of service. And a couple I just wanted to recognize really quick. And as people are listening to the show, if you want to put some stuff over in the comments, some folks that you know are in that same category, please do so we can duly acknowledge those folks. But firefighter paramedic Mike McMullen from the Salisbury Fire Department, Ben's department. He was a National Guard sergeant and was injured in battle Christmas Eve of 2005 in Iraq. Unfortunately, he succumbed to those injuries about 2 weeks later and passed away on January 10th, 2006. And for those of us, I think, Bobby, you remember when we went and did the standby for Salisbury, and Chief Gladwell, very, very good friend of him and the family. He was very struck by that. That was very hard for that department. And also recognize firefighter Chris Slutman. He was with Ladder 27 FDMY. He was a 15-year veteran of that department. He's also a staff sergeant with the United States Marine Corps. And he was killed in action April 8th of 2019 by a roadside bomb near Bagram, Afghanistan. And he also started his fire service career as a volunteer in Kentland in Prince George's County in Maryland. So we're, as large as we are as an industry, sometimes we're still a very small, tight-knit family. And, again, if we have anybody you'd like to recognize and make sure that we honor them appropriately with this Memorial Day coming up. And thanks to all those who are currently serving and have also served in the past. We want to make sure that we say thank you to all of you. So with that, Bobby, I'm going to kick it over to you. And then Chief Tracy, if you wouldn't mind, give yourself an introduction after Bobby gets done with his pearls of wisdom, and we'll get on with the show.
Well, welcome, Chief Tracy. Thank you for coming on. And, in 1982, I was a 17-year-old young man, and I joined the U.S. Navy. And my first tour was part of the multinational peacekeeping force in Beirut, Lebanon. I didn't know anything about overseas or anything like that till I got there, and I became a very quick study as to what was going on over there. It was kind of at the height of the Lebanese, Palestinian, and Israeli conflict, basically. And the group that relieved us, sadly, their barracks were bombed, and we lost nearly 400 people in that attack too. So that's kind of my connection to this weekend, and it's kind of sad, but we're sad because I really like warm weather and I like being outside, and I love not wearing my mask in stores anymore. And there's lots of really good things going on in my life right now, but this really is a weekend where you got to kind of push yourself to not just have barbecues, but think about, those guys and girls that didn't come home. So, everyone have a very good Memorial Day weekend, but always take a little time to think about those that didn't come home. Jerry?
What kind of ship were you on?
I was on the LST 1181, the USS Sumter.
He was getting ready to say a gray one. Don't give him too much credit there.
Landing ship tank.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yep.
Flat bottom boat.
Yes, very much. Drafted 18 feet and was 500 feet long.
I was on I was on, in the 60s, it was an APD, high-speed transport, 312 feet long, 33 feet wide, and basically it was a converted destroyer escort that they put boat davits on it, and our main mission was to carry UDT and SEALs. And to say high-speed transport, the best we could do was 23 knots, and that was taking all the furniture out of the wardroom and throwing it in the boiler. So I was fortunate that there's only 3 APDs on the West Coast, so we would do a scheduled 9-month cruise at a time. So I was fortunate to go over and have 2 tours in the South China Sea. It sounded like you're East Coast, so you never experienced the town of Olongapo in Luzon, the Philippines. That was an experience. Let's put it that way.
I did hear about it from other guys, but no, I did not.
Olongapo, yeah. I love it. No shit by me Honda.
That's the stuff we can't talk about on this show, as a matter of fact.
Exactly. So before you came on, Trevor and I had brought up the fact that I was listening to some prior broadcasts, and I brought up the fact that in one of the broadcasts, you were mentioning some statistics, if you will. I believe there were statistics of, let's say, civilian fatalities and firefighter fatalities. And I believe you had used a comment that this is the number of the people we killed, and these are the numbers of the firefighters we killed. I believe that was the quote. And because I also mentioned that John Tippett, he was on with Ron Sarnicki. When he was talking about civilian fatalities, he also used that same comment, people that we killed. And I tell you what, that got my attention. That's a red flag. We didn't kill those people. That fire started without us. And whatever the circumstances were, whether they were trapped, whether there was a rapid fire development or things like that. I mean, we could talk about Polk County and that event that, but we don't have to go there. Still, if we never showed up, that woman would have died in that private dwelling. Could we say that some departments, when they showed up, they made things worse? That's possible. Or to say we killed those firefighters? No, I say we failed those firefighters. Either we failed in training or we failed in a culture. And some people, they balk at, and even Ron Sarnicki used the word firefighter, the fire service culture. And they also said that they are not against interior aggressive firefighting. They made that point right up front. And let's put it this way. If you joined this profession, whether it was a volunteer, whether you were paid, you raised your hand to do your duty. And you've heard a chief even say, when I come into the firehouse, like, you're on duty. When you raised your hand, that's when you took the move to say, what I do, and when I do it, hopefully it's going to be aggressive, because someday it's going to have to be aggressive to save the life of a civilian, or it's going to have to be aggressive to save the life of a firefighter. And I mean, if there's some chiefs that are against aggressive interior attack, what are you going to do when a firefighter's trapped? And water's going to save it. When I'm standing in front of a room of firefighters, we talk about RIT teams, rapid intervention teams, or New York City, FAST, firefighter assistant search teams. What is a RIT team? And I stand there and I say, men with tools. That's all it is, right? Okay, it's a team. And you allow them to do a size up. Hopefully, if it's a private dwelling, you allow them to split up. Who can do a size up from the rear, things like that. Because if they have to deploy, do you want it to be blind mice syndrome, all 5 or however many guys it is, all going in the same direction? Or is it possible that they should have done a size up, given the ability to do a size up? Maybe they can come in from a 2-prong approach? Doesn't that make sense? If it's a basement, somebody's trapped in a basement, have a team go in the front and maybe have a team go to the side window and make that window a door, cut it down to the foundation, cut a hole. In other words, come in from two different directions. Allow them to think outside the box. Men with tools. But men with tools, if firefighters, and how many private dwelling fires, they enter the front door and they wind up in the basement right away because they didn't know it was a basement fire, or they didn't perform that size up, or they didn't know the house in the neighborhood. Maybe it was a relocator. Maybe it was mutual aid because everybody else is out of a fire. You have to know your district. You really should know your battleground. And if firefighters fall into the basement, men with tools are not going to save them. A backup line might save them. And that's why, and I had mentioned to Trevor earlier, I had heard one philosophy, people before water. And I says, you know what? Just that term alone could be dangerous. That title alone could be dangerous. I know what the chief means. Yeah, it's about saving life. That's why I said when we raised our hand, we took an oath. It's about them. Well, that's a given. You don't have to walk into the firehouse and tell, unless it's a kitchen full of slugs. Then it's a training issue, and then it might be a disciplinary issue to straighten them out. And even there, I'll ask you this. And some people think it's the officers that set the tone, or in New York City, it's the captain of the company that sets the tone. I tell you what, it's the members that set the tone. Because who are you going to answer to? Your peers. I was fortunate. I got hired. I went to the Bronx for 5 years. I kid around and I tell people, and I went to an engine. I went to an excellent engine company. We were good at our job. In the Bronx, you had H-type multiple dwellings. These are ordinary construction. And to say H-type, that's if you were looking from a Google Earth view, they look like the letter H. And for that very fact, they look like an H, meant that had a courtyard before you entered the front, let's say, lobby area, to where you went left or right. You went to a stairwell that brought you upstairs. So from the rig just to the front door could be 2 lengths of hose. And then you go into the 5th floor. It's a length per, floor. And then you need a length on the top floor, at least for the apartment. And by ourselves, we could make the top floor and put the fire out. We were proud of that stretch and the fact that we could do that. But I like truck work. So I transferred out of the Bronx because I wanted to transfer into a tiller. There was only 2 tillers in the Bronx, and that was 59 truck. They were busy, and 39 truck, and they were a bedroom community, and they weren't as busy. So I looked at a truck in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, 108 truck, and that's where I chose to go because it was a tiller. And it was the best move I ever made in my career because they shaped my career. And you had to answer to the men. You didn't have to answer to the boss. Of course, there's the captain, there's the lieutenants. But if you didn't meet the standards of the company, you weren't going to last very long. And when I got there, it was almost like I was taken into a company of athletes. And I wasn't as good as them. Of course I wasn't. I didn't have the experience that these guys had. And I wanted to learn everything I could from them. And they set the tone. They set the example. It was, for them, professionalism. And you know what? That shaped my attitude for the rest of my career because wherever I went past that, and I got promoted out of there, to lieutenant, then being promoted to cap, wherever I went, you know what? I would look at the firefighters wherever I worked and gauge them against 108 truck. And if they didn't meet those standards, then they had a problem with me. But yet I realized if they needed help, it was my responsibility to give it to them because it was given to me. They took the time to teach me forcible entry because I wasn't one of the monsters in the company to say the guys I worked with were monsters. They could take a door with their hip. I had to learn how to use the tools. I had to learn the finesse of the tools. And with that, it allowed me to then go on and teach other firefighters, and teach young firefighters. Later in my career, I worked in Midtown Fort Truck. I went to Brooklyn for 3 years, bounced, came back to Manhattan, and I was privileged to be the captain of Ladder 35, Tower Ladder 35, around the corner from Lincoln Center. And it would be that a former union president, a firefighters union president, Jimmy Boyle was his name. He was working at John Jay College, which really was about 4 or 5 blocks away from my firehouse, 35 truck. And Jimmy Boyle was running what was the cadet program for the FDNY. You would be a cadet, you would learn EMS, you would learn different things about the job. And it would also help if you as a cadet wanted to take the entrance exam for FDNY. They would really prepare you for that. And Jimmy, his son, was a cadet. And his son's best friend that they grew up together, David Arcee, was also a cadet. And then when Michael, his son Michael, was hired, he was assigned, and also David Arcee, the two boys, they grew up together. They were both hired together. They were both assigned to the same engine company, downtown Manhattan, 33 Engine on Great Jones Street. And that firehouse, it used to be, the chief of the department actually used to live there. There was an apartment in it. That's how old this firehouse is. We're saying chief of the department, during the 1800s. But in any event, it would be that era that Michael and David, when they were hired, it was a period where probationary firefighters would spend a year in their original house, a year, and they would rotate for 3 years. So it came Michael's first rotation, and guess where he came? The 35 truck. And I didn't have anything to do with that. And I would find out years later, Jimmy Boyle had him sent there. And his first day working with me anyway, it was a day tour. So right after roll call, I give him the irons. That you get the can, the irons, OV, outside vent, roof man, or you're the chauffeur. Well, I gave him the irons. This is his first day in the truck company. I don't even know if he knows how to force it, though. But I gave him the irons, and right after roll call, we stepped aside, and we held a forcible entry drill. Inward opening doors, outward opening doors. An hour later, we'd go out the door. We'd be third due to a job. He's got to force the door. It's an outward opening door. He forces it, and what's behind it? A block wall. His first door was a wall. But he accomplished the task. And then he would spend a year with me, and he would rotate on, and David Arcee came right behind him. And he spent the year with me as well. So what a compliment that was for Jimmy Boyle to think that these two young men that are near and dear to him, one is his son, his son's best friend, that he would send them to me. I found that to be one of the highest compliments I could get on the job. So to say, firefighters that get killed, granted, buildings, they fail, they collapse. Sometimes we have no idea what the pre-burn time is. We have no idea what faults, structural faults may be lying in wait. There was a young firefighter in Brooklyn. His name was Kevin Kane. His father was a chief who had been retired. But Kevin, he was from a truck company downtown Brooklyn. They were relocated into East New York, another east of Brooklyn, busy neighborhood. They catch a job. He's searching an adjoining apartment from the fire apartment, and it's an ordinary construction. Fire's in the cock loft, so it's above his head. He's in the adjoining apartment, and there was a fault in that the roof joists, if you will, holding up the ceiling, or the ceiling joists, they were not complete 2x6s. They weren't complete from bearing wall to bearing wall. They abutted two together, and they put, let's say, a piece of wood as a scab or as a gang nail right in the middle of the room. And that's what failed. The ceiling came down, and this young man was engulfed in fire. He was at a window. They raised the towel out, a bucket to him. But by the time they did, this poor young man, he only lasted hours after that. So, I mean, yes, there could be structural faults that, we have no control over. But if you look at all the NIOSH reports, and I believe also, it was also mentioned that NIOSH reports now are a little bit different than they were 10 years ago. And what I mean by that, to be specific, the reports today are actually touching upon and talking about fire dynamics. And to be specific about that, 10 years ago, they didn't discuss fire dynamics. They took a look at policies, procedures, time, when the firefighters showed up, the job, the mission they were conducting. But today, we should actually take a look at, okay, when we showed up at any given building, it could be a strip mall, it could be a private dwelling, it could be a high-rise building that it's residential, so we're down in a public hallway, or it's a high-rise office building that once we open the door, we're entering the occupancy. We could start from, okay, when you arrived, what did you see? Was anything showing? And there's some chiefs that even have an issue with that. I don't want to hear nothing showing on the radio because the units are going to slow down. Hey, chief, guess what? That's a training issue. I want to know that snapshot, that point in time, that nothing's showing, because you should also realize from the UL studies, when a fire in a private dwelling goes into ventilation controlled, nothing's going to be showing, and you got a fire in that building. Nothing's showing, chief. I want to know that in point in time, and if your policy in your department is, we'll slow down, turn the sirens off, shame on you. Every time we go out the door, it's legitimate. So when you get off the rig and you open up the door to the private dwelling, to the store, to the floor on fire, did the fire dynamics change? And if they did, how and what did you observe? I mean, we could be in a high-rise building and it's an office building, so that as soon as I open up the stairwell door, I'm entering the occupancy that a fire could be in there somewhere. It could be in my face, or it could be deep into the space. But when I opened the door, did you notice anything? Did smoke come out? And if it came out, did it come out high? Did you happen to know what went in low? Meaning, that's a bidirectional flow. Something's coming out, something's going in. Or when you look at a window and fire's coming out the entire square of that window, that's a unidirectional flow. That could tell you that maybe there's another window on the opposite side of the fire open and it's blowing out this way. In other words, reading smoke and reading buildings and all of that thing, all of those things, we should understand what it's telling us. Dave Dotson and turbulent smoke and all of these things. Okay, is it about to light up? Is it about to flash? In other words, we need to, and that's what Dotson was giving students attending his class, and it became very popular. I believe Phil Jost from Seattle has now picked up on that, and he's delivering that around the United States, if not at FDIC. All of that's good stuff, because the more you see it, you're logging it into recognition prime decision making. Here's your 35 millimeter slide tray up here. And when you show up to a fire, that slide tray is spinning and it's going to stop on, whoa, that looks familiar. And you'll make a decision. I even think that Tibbet talked about crew resource management when they were talking about, the things that they want to develop in the Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Crew resource management, well, it has to deal with preparing your mind so you can make decisions in a millisecond at times. It can't just be a knee-jerk reaction and hope that the reaction is going to be the best one that you can make. It's better if it's an educated guess and reaction, things like that. So that was a couple of things that I picked up on some prior broadcasts. I want to look at how we failed firefighters. It could be that people talk about, I teach. I go out and I teach. I teach. No, you don't teach. You're actually sharing something. And we could say, well, I could teach you something, but I can't understand it for you. And that's what I was talking about with Trevor earlier. I mean, out at the academy, you know, even FDNY, you get a classroom of 30 firefighters. 10 of them are not paying attention. They're looking at their watch. When are we getting out of here? So it's like, I could teach you, but I can't understand it for you. And those people we may never help. But yet, I'll back up for a second. I also, at times, if I want to touch upon, leadership or something like that, I have a photo that I took of a firefighter in one of my houses in the 4-9 Battalion. In the 4-9, I had 9 companies, 3 trucks, 6 engines, and I walked in a kitchen, and it wasn't that I had my phone. I had a camera with me all the time. I used to carry it in my turnout coat. It was waterproof. And by the time I thought about taking the pictures, it was the exciting moments were over because you're in the heat of battle. But in any event, I'm walking in the kitchen, and this firefighter is on the couch. He's asleep. He's got the TV remote on his belly, and his belly is up to here because this guy should have been put on light duty 5 years ago because he's been skating the medical office, being obese for years, and we've been covering for him. And his attitude in the firehouse is horrendous. He bitches, he moans, he's this, he's that. But we could have a drill in the kitchen, and he could be sitting on the side, and he doesn't even look like he's engaged or interested. But guess what? He's listening. And you know why he's listening? Because someday that fat bastard is going to be in the kitchen with 2 young firefighters that are going to be detailed in from some other house, and he's going to start spouting off something that he heard to put himself across like, hey, this is the stuff that I know, because he's full of shit. You know what I mean? So even the fat bastard will get something out of a drill, even if he's not engaged. I had started a program in the 4-9, and I called it the Firefighter Mentorship Program. Because, there was mentorship programs for chief officers, captains, going to be chiefs. And some departments would have, first-line officers. There's some sort of a mentorship program. But you very rarely hear anything for firefighters. So what I thought I'd make up and how I presented it, I took, let's say, a Word document. This is on the computer because finally FDNY got computers. We had onion skins. We had carbon paper for so many years. And then during the Giuliani administration, and he brought in a fire commissioner, Howard Safer. And then Howard would go on and become the police commissioner. But Giuliani and Safer really knew each other from back in the days of being federal prosecutors and things like that. But for the very fact that Howard became our commissioner, he said to Rudy, these guys are still using carbon paper. So we all got computers. So in a Word document, I could insert, let's say, a graphic or a photo. And then that graphic or a photo would become a metaphor. And I'll just throw this out. It would be the front of a tenement with fire escapes and 4 or 5 firefighters on one landing of a fire escape on the front of a tenement with a hose line that they're stretching to the next floor. And basically the question would be, what's wrong with this picture? So if you think about it, that fire escape is probably, the building was built turn of the century, 1905, 1910. That fire escape has been hanging off the side of that building since 1910. Okay? Even if the landlord has been painting this thing, do they get paint in between, where it's riveted and things like that, or where it's tied into the building? So we're talking about the connection points. And would you say that the weight of 4 firefighters might be excessive for one landing?
Was a fat guy on the crew?
Well, that fat bastard wouldn't even get off the rig. We couldn't get him. You're right, but that's a good point. If you think about it, each firefighter with his gear and his Scott pack and this and that, you're well over 200 pounds. So you're talking 400 pounds on a landing that you're increasing the eccentric load of this entire fire escape. So that's the point being made. Like, what's wrong with this picture? And of course, I probably came up with maybe 100 different scenarios. And basically it would be the metaphor. I would number them, the question, and then it was all blank lines. And I would send 4 different ones out to all my houses for the week. And how it was supposed to play out, if you will, the officer on duty was to grab one from the office, go down, hold your roll call, give out your assignments, tell them what the plan for the day was, and just hand the firefighters the question for the day. And those firefighters were supposed to, by themselves, now it's a day tour. You got 9 hours, or if it's a night tour, you got 15 hours. Sit down, just the firefighters, and do this by yourself. The officer shouldn't be sitting there with you. And by the way, this is not the officer's drill. Whatever drill he's going to hold in the tour, that's separate from this. And the firefighter should sit down. So that would be the senior man all the way to the probie, sit down and, all right, let's come up with some answers for this. And of course, at the end of the tour, those firefighters give it back to the officer. He was supposed to sign it, date it, and send it back to me. Now, when I get it back, I look at the signature and I look at the writing. And if it's the same writing, don't jerk me off. You know what? I didn't fall off the back of a turnip truck. So the officer filled it out. I want to see different handwritings and things like that. And then I would take the collective answers from all the houses. And if there was anything missing, I would add to that. I would take all the collective answers and I would send that same metaphor, that same photo back out to them with all the collective answers from the firefighters and add some that maybe should be there. They wouldn't know if I added anything or not. And the firefighters would get to see it and read it a second time to reinforce, because now they're getting to see, oh, wow, these other guys, oh, yeah, we didn't think of that. So it became a way that the answers coming back to me, it gave me a gauge of what they knew and what they didn't know. And whatever they didn't know, that's something that I had to work on. Or I had to work it out with the officers of that company. Because if they were weak in a certain area, it was our responsibility to build them up and teach them. So it gave me a gauge on, again, knowing what they knew and what they didn't know on different things. And the questions were all over the place. You know, they would be tactical. They would be water, engine, truck, ventilation, even deportment, by the way. You know, how about a guy in a St. Patrick's Day parade? He's wearing $300 sunglasses. He's got no hat, no tie. He's in uniform, marching down the parade with a green tattoo on his cheek. You think that's how you want to represent the New York City Fire Department? I don't think so. So I would even ask questions like that. You know, when you wear that uniform, you represent firefighters from before 1865, before the department was formed. And all of those firefighters that sacrificed their injuries and became maimed and or were killed in the line of duty, and their spouses and families that sacrificed. That's what you represent when you put that uniform on. And, you know, we got to remember that. And as I said, it's the other firefighters in the company that you have to live up to these standards. Because if you don't, guess what? You're out of here, pal. You're not going to be part of this company because this is what we represent, and you're not making them up. Just my 2 cents.
and Jerry, I mean, we listen to you talk about this stuff all night, and you're absolutely right. We've had these conversations. I know Bobby and Ben, welcome. I hope your crochet club went well tonight. I know you're a little bit late from that, but hope everything went great on that. But we talk a lot about all around or 360 degree leadership, and when you show a flow chart. You have the big box at the top. Everybody knows who that is. And everybody knows who the next box is down, and the next box is down in descending order. But all those little boxes that go across the bottom, that's the boots on the ground. That's the wisdom in the trenches. And, I know I give this compliment to Bobby quite a bit, is, he'll be the guy out there when he's got the guy who his impression in the fire service is leaving his ass dead in the recliner. That's the only impression he ever makes. But Bobby will be out there throwing ladders and pulling lines, just the basics. And not that Bobby hasn't done it a million times, not that Ben hasn't done it a million times, but it's that million and first time. And Bobby, just kind of feed off of some of the analogies you've made before. Bobby will talk a lot about when you watch football and you watch a play on Sunday, and that play has probably been run at least 50 to 100 times that past week. They watch game film, what we do right, what we do wrong, what can we do better. They did a dry run. They went through a lot of things on that. No pads drill, and until the point that they didn't practice until they got it right. They practiced until they couldn't get it wrong. And Bobby, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think this would be appropriate, especially with the weekend coming up. Would you mind real quick giving your analogy that you've talked to people? And I had this, how can I say, spirited discussion in a Chiefs group the other day that I didn't really I think it was a little bit misguided part of the conversation, but I threw some Bobby McGee at him with SEAL Team 6 and your analogy there. So, Bobby, you mind laying it on us just so people can hear it again and, just talk about the reps and sets and why it's important to do what we do.
Yeah, I think people get hung up in the fire service by, call volume and amount of fires they go to. And there's an article this month in Fire Engineering from, I can't remember who wrote it now. Jeff Shoup, I think. I'm not sure. Anyways,
super guy.
Oh, he starts right off and he talks about a new officer can't get experience on the job because it's too costly to the community. In other words, by the time an officer becomes proficient, if he's becoming proficient by going to fires, you burn a lot of stuff down for the officer to be good. And when we look at SEAL Team 6. They look at it in the opposite way of the fire service. They didn't have to kill 1,000 Osama bin Ladens. What they did was they trained and they practiced and they trained and they practiced. And when they found out the possible layout of the building, they trained and practiced on a building like that. They trained for things happening. They trained for if this guy got killed, what they were going to do. Hell, they wrecked a friggin' helicopter and still got the son of a bitch.
Exactly.
So, that's not because they ran 1,000 fires and they put that fire out. It's because they prepared and they got ready and they prepared and they got ready. And, that's, to me, that's how, the fire service should be. I think that you prepare and you get ready. And obviously, if you're in Ocean City, Maryland, we're not going to prepare a whole lot for a subway car rescue. But if you're an FDNY and you're at a major hub in a subway thing, you're probably going to do a lot of training on what you're going to do when that happens. And if you're in a rural area, you probably think about, a farm machinery rescue or something like that. So, but the point is that you do have to prioritize your training, but going to calls in people's places with people's lives in danger to learn is a very bad place to learn. And that's, and I'm sure Jerry can talk about this a little bit more, but when you're an officer, there's a point in time where you have to take it over. If the guy doesn't know how to force the door and you need the door open, you may just have to say, hey, brother, give me the irons. And then afterwards, you go back and train again, and that's kind of it. But you never want to be in that position. That's not where you want to be. I always said, if you have a great crew, you don't need an officer. I mean, honestly, you have a really good crew, you don't need an officer. But it's always nice to have an officer because what he's doing is watching their back. He's watching different things. He's looking at a bigger picture. He's looking around. He knows that guy can stretch the line to the fire. He knows a backup line, the guy's going to get him the line to the fire. He's looking around. Is there a weak ceiling somewhere? Is there a weird doors or something there? So I think that it's I think it's for us, especially in our slower parts of the country where we don't run as much of a fire volume as the urban departments do. It's even more important for us to train. And I find it as an excuse not to train in rural departments where we don't see that much fire load anyway. Well, that's more reason to train because you know what? When there's a fire in your community, every single community has an 8-year-old in flannel pajamas. There's not a fire department out here that doesn't. Okay. And when their place is on fire, you're the one they're calling, and you're the only one that can help them out. And it doesn't matter if you're a department that goes to 50 calls a year or it's a department that goes to a million calls a year. The kid in flannel pajamas expect you to know how to do your job. And I think that's a good expectation. So I think it's about the training and the reps and things. And Jerry, I got a question for you. I think when I look at the the numbers, when I'm talking about numbers, what I'm talking about is really that if you look at the raw data. I just did numbers the other day. Trevor knows I beat numbers up terrible, but if you look at the same amount of structure fires in the country and the fatalities, in reality, only about 1 in every 180 working fires, do we have a fatality. So what happens in less busy departments is they may take a long time to run 180 calls. So they become very, what I call, engine eccentric in this part of the country, because that's normally what takes care of the problem is the engine company going in and putting it out. But the 180th fire, when they go there, if they're not ready, and Trevor, I've said this before, if you all of a sudden hear that somebody's trapped and your entire operation changes, you were doing it wrong to begin with.
Amen.
Yeah,
I like you. I like what you said. Absolutely. You're 100% correct.
So what I want to ask you about, Jerry, was, I think, why I don't like these conversations about the go or no go or the commitment inside the fire grounds and things is I think that even in the basic training in the Firefighter 1 programs, we put a lot of doubt in young guys' minds and young girls' minds about when you should or when you shouldn't go. And I think that trust has to go a long way. And so if you want to talk about your Brooklyn experience, when you worked on a truck company, part of that truck company, I would imagine, is because you had a trust in the engine company. You didn't have to worry about what they were doing.
Exactly.
So talk a little about those team dynamics with us, if you would, just what you experienced there in New York.
And I will. But before you go there, or we go there, if you think about, departments in small communities and this and that, these are communities in many cases that you live in. So you're really responding, the very neighborhood I live in here on Long Island, it's protected by a volunteer department. And you could be showing up to somebody that you're showing up to car accidents and, the fatalities you're looking at, these people. That's got to be really difficult, very difficult. And I like what you said. If somebody's trapped and all of a sudden you've got to change direction or whatever, you probably weren't doing it right to begin with. And I like to use the term, it's about disciplines. What are the disciplines that you adhere to in your function and purpose going out the door? When I got to 108 truck, when we were going out the door, when I was leaving my house driving to work, I knew I'd be going to a fire on my shift. So when we were on the rig and we didn't have bunker gear, what we wearing our masks, this was it was a change in culture. At one time, the mask was in a box and it was in a compartment on the side of the rig. They weren't part of the seat. So we weren't wearing masks, but we were wearing our gear. Did we always pull up the boots 3/4? In the engine, we would. In the truck, probably not. And to tell you the truth, if we were in outside position, the outside vent or roof, we were probably wearing work shoes. We weren't even wearing the 3/4 boots, to perform the outside vent or go to the roof. And in some cases, those firefighters going to the roof weren't even wearing the 3/4 fire jacket, if you will. They were wearing a dungaree jacket. But yet, we were ready to go to work. Gloves, the job didn't even issue gloves at the time. We were flagging down or stopping at utility vans. Con Edison is an electric utility here in New York City. We would stop at a Con Ed van. Hey, guys, you got any gloves? And they would give us gloves. They were leather and canvas gloves. That was the gloves that we were wearing. But we knew enough to wear them. But we were ready to go to work. Let's put it that way. Even when I got promoted, I go to Midtown, and now I'm in 4 truck in the heart of Times Square. the theater district. And this was a whole different, if you want to call it, arena for me. The only high-rise firefighting that I had, let's say, responded to, high-rise fires, were residential, and some of them were in, let's say, if you want to call them the projects, city housing. There was some more, I wouldn't call it high-end, but some more expensive high-rise, really very close to the firehouse, the Lindsay Park Apartments. And to tell you the truth, we didn't have very many fires there. I wasn't working for the one wind-driven fire that 108 responded to first due. When they were at, let's say, it was a center hall, scissor stairs put you on the floor, and the scissor stairs were, of course, near the center core, near the elevators. And the scissor stairs would be behind the elevator, so that when you came out onto the floor, you were either left of the elevators or right of the elevators, and that whatever stairwell, it would be the opposite on each floor. They just crisscross back and forth. When they got to the fire floor, the apartment door was open, the windows had failed, and they were looking at it, and it was the end apartment all the way down the hall. They were looking at a blue flame coming out of that apartment, impinging on the apartment door across from the fire apartment. And one of the brothers had borrowed a Garrity light from my helmet, and he put it on his helmet. If you remember the old Garrity lights. When he brought it back, after the job came back, that Garrity light melted and was just a piece of plastic that melted down the side of his helmet. He said, "Hey, thanks a lot." But that's how hot it was in the hallway. Nobody was making that hallway. And the only fatality, the fire apartment had nobody in it. The only fatality was a person in the bedroom of the apartment across the hall that the flame was impinging on their door, and the heat and smoke was being blown into their apartment, and that was our only fatality. And to tell you the truth, we didn't really sit down to discuss what we could do about that other than two firefighters, and one of them was Kevin Shea. And if you have heard the name, he was the one that did that high-rise rescue in Times Square with Rescue 1. Well, Kevin Shea was a fireman in 108. And he's sitting in the kitchen of 108 with Mike Higgins, another outstanding firefighter. The two of them are talking about using a curtain or some sort of a blanket to put over a window, and you'll never guess who the covering officer for the day was sitting in that kitchen. John Norman. John Norman is sitting in the kitchen of 108 listening to these two firefighters talking about, gee, if we had, that foil blanket that they put around the bucket of the towel ladders, if we could put that over a window, or why don't we go around the corner? Because 108 truck and 216 engine, our firehouse was built, attached and part of a New York City police precinct, the 90. And on the side of the 90 precinct was emergency truck 2. It was ESU. And they didn't talk to us. Of course, we didn't talk to them. But both Kevin and Mike Higgins went around the corner, knocked on their door, and started a conversation with them. Hey, you guys got a Kevlar blanket. You got this, you got that. We're thinking about, and the cops really blew them off. Take a walk. So they really didn't even entertain anything we were talking about. Today, I could honestly tell you the relationship between the New York City Police Department and the New York City Fire Department couldn't be, it's the best it ever was. We're brothers in battle, and there's solidarity there. We understand their challenge. They understand our challenge. If we could have their back, we will, and they'll do the same for us. But there was a time it wasn't like that. So when John Norman, years later, would entertain, let's say, a vendor to come up with and it was a blanket, if you will, a very large blanket to drop over a window. Well, really, that's where he got the seed was planted, in the kitchen of 108 truck. But yet, when I got involved in, let's say, the study of fire dynamics in residential apartment fires, high-rise building fires that would turn into wind-driven events, we looked at a smaller curtain and we call it the KO curtain. And it was also designed, if you will, by a lieutenant in a ladder company out in Rockaway, Queens. Oswald was his name. And that curtain is issued to every truck company on the job. And if you get a fire in a high-rise multiple dwelling and you're going to the floor above, that curtain's with you. And you could pre-deploy it or deploy it after the windows have failed. Pre-deploy it if there's the presence of wind and the brothers are going to move in on that fire, and you want to pre-deploy it just in case the windows fail. In other words, we've learned something. We've lost firefighters at Battalion, 3 firefighters in the hallway of a wind-driven fire. And their funerals, it wasn't a closed casket. They weren't burnt to death. They were just, their bodies were overwhelmed by the heat in the hallway that was being generated by a wind-driven fire in a sparsely furnished apartment. Doesn't take much fuel, but if you stoke it with oxygen, it could be fatal. So, let's put it this way, and sharing things and yourself going out and teaching. You couldn't live long enough to make every mistake that could be made in life. So learn from other people's mistakes and lessons learned. That's the way to do it.
And Jerry, to that end, and I know you and I were talking prior to the broadcast, many moons ago, you had come down to Ocean City and done some training with us. And I believe we were doing some high-rise training in one of the parking garages. We had built some walls, and, since then, some other names you had mentioned, Bobby Pressler, Ray McCormick, some of those guys have come down as well and to share some knowledge with us. And I just remember from all those years ago talking about, people would be enamored, and Bobby, you had mentioned this as well a little bit, with much busier departments having the sets and reps. And I just remember, Jerry, you had echoed something that actually a battalion chief that I knew from Baltimore City had said the almost identical thing, is that we're only as good as our last call. And just because you're running a lot of calls doesn't mean you're running a lot of calls correctly. And eventually it's going to catch up to you. And the caveat that the BC from Baltimore, who actually his son's on the job up there in FDNY still, he said, look, if we screw up something at 8 o'clock in the morning, probably by the end of the tour, we're going to run a similar enough call that we can redeem ourselves and apply what we learned. You guys might not have that same call until the next tour, the next week, the next month, and small departments, rural departments might be a year or two down the road. So how do you take the lessons learned from that last incident and put them into practice? So the advantage that busier department has is they're going to have an opportunity to have redemption and reapply those lessons much sooner than some of the other folks. And, that was just really, I think, a very, a unique perspective to say, we need to look at the way we train. We need to make sure that we're putting in the sets and reps and why we're doing it. And circling again back to what Bobby had said, we might not have that fire duty. We might not have that, what they consider a low frequency, high impact event. No, we train for the MCI. We train for the plane crash, the school bus accident. We don't have that every shift, but just like we talk to our folks, if you respond to an automatic fire alarm, I want you to be surprised that the building's not on fire, not get there and go, oh shit. And I think this goes back to Chief Tracy, what you were talking about. And I remember Andy Frederick saying this many, many years ago about the garbage man coming around the corner. He sees a dumpster full of trash. He doesn't freak the hell out and go, holy crap, there's a dumpster full of trash. He goes, okay, yep. I call that Tuesday. I'm a trash man. There's a garbage can full of trash. I'm a fireman. There's a building full of fire. That's what we do. So you're getting in that mindset that every call is a drill, even if it's a quote unquote routine emergency. How we position is important. How we set up is important. How we deploy with our tools is important. The lessons learned from inside the building, be nosy. You look around a little bit, even on an EMS call. Yeah, we're going to do our patient care. I'm not taking anything away from that. But go, wow, if I have to come back here at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's going to be a problem at the end of this hallway. So to me, every call is an opportunity to perfect the trade.
Yeah, and my memory, it's bad, if you will. There was, and it might be Nashville, it was a fatal fire, a lieutenant and a probie. And it was, they took the elevator to the fire floor. It was an automatic alarm. and they had claimed that they were there maybe half a dozen times or a little bit more in a month. Something Towers was the name of
Memphis.
Yeah, it was Memphis, Bobby. I think it was Tennessee, but I believe it was Memphis. I know the one you're talking about, Chief.
Well, I'll tell you what. I have a copy of the chief of the department being interviewed after that fatality, and he's sharing, and he's getting emotional. And I tell you what, I can feel it. I know what he's going through. But yet, and you're talking about, every run is legitimate. I worked in, as you heard, 4-truck in Midtown. Do you know how many nuisance alarms how many alarms we responded to per year? Was 6,000 to 7,000 runs a year, just that company. So how many of them were nuisance calls? More than half. And can I be honest with you to say that there were some companies on the job that when they went out the door and they pulled up in front of one of these buildings, the turnout coat would be over the arm. They'd get off the rig and they'd walk in. Hey, what do we got? Well, when I was in 4-truck, and certainly the other officers, and I went through about 4 different captains and a change of lieutenants, if you will. And one of those lieutenants was Terry Hatton, and you may have heard that name. Terry Hatton would go on to become the captain of Rescue 1. But we were disciplined in that every time we went out the door, we were suited up. And as a matter of fact, even before the job started purchasing hoods and things like that, Terry Hatton, because he came out of Rescue 2 as a firefighter, he was already wearing hoods, and he purchased them for the rest of the officers and then some of the firefighters. In other words, we purchased them on our own. And don't you know, some of the neighboring companies would throw out comments like, here they come, the boys in the hood, because we were wearing hoods. But, of course, we were wearing them for a reason. We weren't showing off or we thought we were better than anybody else. If we were going to go deep, it helped. Let's put it that way. But we were professional. And every time, even if I was going back to the same building for the 4th time in the same tour, every time I walked in, it was a professional conversation with the responsible person. It's a professional conversation because the world is watching. Even in a hotel, I'm attending a conference, and I won't even mention the city. It wasn't FDIC, but it's another city on the East Coast. And it's a conference. And it's, let's say, 8 o'clock at night in the lobby of the hotel. How many people do you think are standing around in the lobby of that hotel with blue T-shirts on and Maltese crosses on? The lobby's loaded with them. Okay? So now, all of a sudden, my wife and I were upstairs. You hear an alarm going off in the building. We're on the 3rd floor, and really outside our window is a setback, and it's a roof. So if I had to, I could really break the window, and we're out on a setback. And it's a recorded alarm, and it's telling us to evacuate. My wife is hounding me. We got to get out of the room. And I'm saying, honey, we don't have to go anywhere. Blah, blah, blah. She haunted me to death. So we leave. We go down the stairs, and it puts us out on, let's say, exposure 2 of the building. And I says, well, let's go outside. And the reason I walked outside is I want to see how many rigs or what rigs are out, who responded to this box. There's an engine in a truck, and there's no chief. Okay, and I walk out on exposure 2. We go to the front of the building. We come back into the lobby. The firefighters that responded, and the reason they're there is probably some firefighter that's attending the conference got his major load on, came back to the hotel, goes up into the stairwell, and opens up one of the standpipe outlets, and there's a flow of water into the stairwell. Who else would do that but a drunken firefighter? Somebody who's unprofessional. He's got his major load on. Okay. But in the lobby, to say, now I'm looking around for the on-duty firefighters. The only way I could tell that a firefighter was on duty, because he's wearing a baseball hat, he's got a blue T-shirt with a Maltese cross, he's got a radio over his arm. You know, that's the only way I could tell, oh, he must be on duty. So that's how they came into the building. And I tell you what, that's a disgrace. That's not how we respond. That's not how we want the public to see us, because we are professionals in every aspect and on every run. And then the interaction we have with the responsible person at the hotel, whether it be a high-rise building, a fire safety director, guess what? That's also professional, because come day of the fire, we want that conversation to be that professional as well. I've been to high-rise drills in high-rise buildings where the drill went fine. Hey, this was great. We learned things. But in real life, come the day to fire, that same fire safety director, he's speaking in tongues because he's so nervous he doesn't know what to say. But he's been part of a drill. But if you do this the same every time as professional, just like you said, sets and reps. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a firefighter and you're uncomfortable wearing your gear and an automatic fire alarm, how do you think it's going to be comfortable when it's on fire? If you can't handle your gear when it's on,
exactly,
it's going to be even more miserable when the building's on fire.
Yeah.
And Trevor and I have seen it where, you know, they don't do it, and so now when they have to put their mask on, it takes them 2 or 3 minutes to get their mask on. Oh, I forgot my hood. I forgot it. Because they're not doing their sets and reps.
Right.
You know, if the only thing you put your stuff on is, at least wherever I've worked at, if you only put your stuff on when it's on fire, you don't put your stuff on very often.
Where's my gloves? You throw your gear on the rig and you didn't even check your gloves because some other asshole borrowed them last night and didn't give them back. You know, there's all kinds of things.
And Bobby, you know, that drives me just batshit crazy anyway, because, you know, like I say, when you get there, be ready to go to work. I don't care if it's food on the stove, an automatic fire alarm, or the towering inferno. Be ready to go to work each and every time. And guess what? I'm down here in South Florida now, and it gets freaking ball sweat hot down here. Trust me. Now, we don't have ice. We don't have cold. That's nice. But at the same time, you know, when you show up to that call, guess what? We're going to sweat it out, guys. We're going to do this. And I'm very proud of the folks that I work with, because it doesn't matter what the scenario is. And you know, I brag on them a lot. You know, I catch my firefighters doing the right thing a lot. And I love that, where I can look and go, man, you know, these guys had, even if it's a weekend where I might not be on duty. Yeah, Bobby, I'm sorry, I work. Yeah, I'm a day work guy anymore. But you know, my wife and I were having breakfast about a month ago. Yeah, I hear you. And you know, I'm sitting there. It's not because of a directive, an edict, or anything else, but my guys are sitting there at not sitting, but you know, here it is, 11 o'clock in the morning. They're out doing their shift drill, and it is freaking hot. It is just a nasty, sticky. You know, these guys are doing it. They're out there in full gear. They're putting in the sets and reps. That wasn't an edict. That wasn't a directive that came out. They did because that's what they want to do. And so when you catch your firefighters doing the right thing, and it's contagious, it spreads. It's a beautiful thing, because they want to be good on that next call. And Bobby, I forget where we were. It was one of the places we had an opportunity to go and share some information, and some class somewhere that they'd asked us to come out for. Where was that guy from? I think that their department had run like one structure fire in 30 years. Do you mind just telling that real quick? I thought that was so impressive.
Yeah, Wichita, Kansas, we were at, and you'll appreciate this, Jerry. The guy was in our class, and he was paying attention. He was one of them guys you knew was just locked and riveted onto you the whole time. And he practiced everything, and he went through it, and it was really cool. It used to be a much smaller conference than it is now. So we'd all just go out to a pub afterwards and kind of talk. So the instructors would be out with the students, and you have these conversations. And this kid came up, and he's still asking questions. He's still drilling us about, what about this and what about that? And I said, you're really into this. You're really putting a lot of effort into this. This is really cool. And he says, I'm from this town called Longton, Kansas. And he says, I've been in the fire department for, 6 years or 8 years, whatever it was. He said, we've never been to an alarm at a building. if you look on the map, there's this long thin town, and there's nothing but brush fire land all around them on this flat Kansas, And he said, "But if we ever have a fire in my town, I want to know what to do."
Amen.
And I had to give him a whole lot of props for that, because he was zeroed in on, if they had that emergency in their town, he knew there was no other town near them, and he was it, and he was going to be as best as he could be for that. And
that guy is a fireman. I'll call him a fireman day in and day out.
Trevor, where's your district in relation to the West Palm Airport? East, west, north, south?
I'm a little bit northeast. Actually, I'm in a very, very little place called Palm Beach Shores, and we're the easternmost part of the state. Palm Beach International Airport's probably 15, 20 minutes away. We're right across the intercoastal from West Palm and Riviera Beach. So nice little area, but what's kind of unique is we have major marinas, we have a port on the other side, we have high rises, and my entire fire district, Jerry, you believe this or not, I mean, coming from Ocean City, it's a different animal. My entire fire district is a half square mile, but we got a lot of crap that's in that half square mile, and we're engine centric, so we don't have special services. I mean, we have to rely a lot on mutual aid for specific things, but I tell you, it's the amount of stuff that the folks that I work with not only do but can do is just amazing. I'll tell you a really quick story. We had a jumper about a month ago off of one of the high rises, and the guy was entangled up in a pergola about a story and a half off the ground. And this guy's DOA, and we don't have a heavy rescue. We don't have a lot of stuff. We have things on the engine, and we work with basic hauling, lowering devices, this, that, and the other. And these guys, I mean, they were on it, and they don't have calls like this very often, but they went start to finish, extended operation to get this guy down. And it was so funny because, of course, they have the our station identifier is 80. We're engine 80, fast 80. But underneath, of course, one of the guys takes a picture and sends it to me, and it says, heavy rescue 80 underneath after they got done. But they had that pride that they were able to do these things as a basic first in company. And Bobby, you've heard me say this a million times. And, Jerry, I'm sorry to have a squirrel moment and kind of go down this rabbit hole, but especially in some of the medium to smaller size departments, Bobby's heard me say this a million times, that sometimes you need to be the best one-line fire department that you can possibly be. And that first line, that first in engine company, your positioning, your size up, how you get that first line in service, what you're doing to protect the occupants of that building, that's your bread and butter. And if you do nothing else but become the best one-line fire department that you can be, the rest will start to fall in place because you have that focus of your initial operations, that first new mindset. So right, wrong, or indifferent, I think that's put some guys on a decent path. But I'd love to hear some thought process on that. If there's anything we can do to improve on that mindset when we're trying to get that into these guys, just like the one you talked about out there in Kansas, Bobby. I mean, we all have our bravado, and we have our T-shirts, and like Chief Tracy saying, all of us have the closet full of blue shirts and the Maltese crosses and the I belong. And of course, the people that drive me nuts with the shirts that say, I walk where the devil dances, I fight with blah, 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 whatever. But at the same time, I look at that young guy who is trying to serve his community, and he's got the mindset. He's a firefighter. He's a fireman. And that's the kind of mindset we need from the most rural place in Kansas to the most the busiest metropolitan department in our country.
How many gallons in your booster tank?
750.
Nice. And I'm sure, like Kirk Eikenson, he may be saying it's people before water, but he's bringing water with him, and he's got it in his booster. So, I mean, really the message there is water's going to be there to protect us. We'll make these moves when we can, but water's just as important as saving that life.
And Chief, I agree with you. One of our pre-show conversations that we had with Kurt, and maybe this will put a little bit more context into it. when I first started in Ocean City, and as a side note, I still have my 3/4 boots sitting in my office, just as a reminder to some of the newer kids when they come in. They're like, "Hey, what museum you get that out of?" I'm like, shut up. But anyway, moving forward, is we would have some of our folks that were so ingrained in water supply that they wouldn't charge that first line until the hydrant was hooked up. So we'd have an incipient state fire. We'd have a mattress that we could have gone in, knocked down, done the primary and secondary search and done well. But they were so reluctant to pull the lever on that first hand line until they had water coming from the hydrant in. So that mattress fire went from being a mattress to a room and contents to 2 rooms to 3 rooms. And then they felt justified because now we got fire blowing out 3 windows. Yeah, I told you, young man, this is going to get bad. Well, no shit. If you don't put water on a fire, it's going to get bad. We know this. So that was a little bit of the pre-show conversation to say, use the resources that you have. If you got 500 gallons, 750, that's a lot of water that appropriately placed. You can do a lot of good, or at least hold something and get the people out of that private dwelling or that multiple dwelling. And whether or not you save the building, that's another story. But at least you can get that. You can start to apply water very early on. So I think that was a little bit of the conversation pre-show, and I don't want to get too fired up about it because my blood pressure is actually going down in recent years. So
I take medication for that.
Hey, Trevor, I got a new one for you, man. So
talk to me.
If you have one victim to rescue, the best thing to have is a really good truck company.
Bravado Engine Company is.
If you got multiple people to rescue, the best way to rescue them is a good engine company.
Oh, amen.
Because the truck has to have time to go. You know what I mean? They got to go from one victim to the next victim to the next victim. So the engine is just as important in the rescue as the truck is, because we don't know if there's more than one person in there.
FDN1, you're going to the floor above. You go to the floor above with the confidence that the engine's putting the fire out below you. And bravado from the engine is when we put our fires out, there's no puddles. And what does that tell you? It's the efficiency of water. You don't waste it. Amen. So there was something else I was going to talk about. I lost it, whatever it was. So how important could it have been?
At our age, it's pretty important.
Ocean City. So your high-rise, do you have prevailing winds at times, different times of the year?
All days of the year.
There you go. So, I mean, at times you might come in from a balcony, right? Oh, I knew where I was going to come from. A chief was showing me some videos, if you will, that he was going to have an audience of, let's say, prospective incident commanders. And he was showing them some private dwellings where the whole front, exposure 1, the side A, whether it be a single story or a couple of stories involved in fire. And he was, let's say, soliciting from, let's say, the attendees, prospective chiefs or chiefs in training. Would you select stretching a line to the rear and coming in from the seaside, from the clean side? And I'm thinking to myself, the efficiency of water. What, are you kidding me? You could knock down the whole front of that building with a quick hand line and go in the front door like we normally do. Why would you even be talking about going to the seaside and using that much more hose to come back to the front? If everybody's using pre-connects. So I didn't say anything, but, water puts out a lot of fire.
Odds are they're coming from a department using fog nozzles.
Oh, I guess so. And they, people put out fires with fog nozzles. It's okay. I mean, I'm smooth. What are you kidding me? I had the privilege of forming the only squad company in all of Manhattan. And this was 1996. And I got to pick my firefighters. And when the commissioner, nice. When the commissioner says, okay, we're going to start picking our firefighters, he says, okay, Tracy, you go first. I says, okay. Commissioner, as you are aware, I'm coming from 35 truck, so I'm bringing a firefighter with me, Larry Vigilio, so my first pick will be Andy Fredericks. So right in the beginning, I picked 2 firefighters, and the rest of the captains would laugh, blah, 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 and they would go on. And those 2 firefighters would be working on 9/11, both of them, by the way. But to have Andy Fredericks, and we were friends, by the way. I knew him before we formed Squad 18. As a matter of fact, I worked for Andy out at FDIC because Andy hosted hands-on engine company operations. And he gave myself and Dave McGrail, he was a captain out in Denver at the time. I was a captain of 35 truck. And we worked for him. He was the lead instructor, and we were, schleps. But we were lucky to be part of that. And then a couple of years later, Dave and I would break away from Andy's engine company ops, and Dave and I would just do standpipe ops, strictly on standpipes. So Andy, I knew where he was coming from. In my career, if I met people that was smarter than me, I latched onto you and I wouldn't let go. Because you were teaching me something. Bobby Pressel, when I met him, I latched onto him because you just sit like this, you talk, you learn something from him. And it would be that Bobby became friends with Mike Lombardo from Buffalo. These are 2 brothers from another mother. Mm-hmm. They're of the same cloth. And meeting Mike Lombardo, it was Bobby being invited down to Ocean City with Lombardo and them allowing me to tag along as a schlep, in those live burn exercises. And we were having the time of our life. And I was learning, and it was great, Ocean City. I was so impressed with a volunteer department that they had 61 high-rises at the time in their district that they were responding to. That was more high-rises than some of the companies in Brooklyn, in their district. To say, and they were engaged. That was a gift going to Ocean City. I'll tell you what. My wife and I are going down there this summer with the family. We're renting a place. So I'm looking forward to that. I love crab.
Yeah, and Jerry, one of the guys watching, you probably remember him, John Holloway was instrumental in getting you and Pressler and Lombardo, all you guys down there. And, you since retired from the department, but, it was such a great thing, especially as a combination department that we had you guys coming in, and it wasn't the rock star thing to say, hey, we've got 5-man engine companies, 6-man truck companies. Look at us. You're trying to say, okay, how do you guys operate? How do you work? What do you want to do? And try to make us the most proficient we can be. And Bobby, you kind of took a lot of that to heart as well. I remember doing a lot of the training to say, when we had 3-person crews, you said, all right, well, actually for the short period, we have 4-person crews. All right, let's train as 4-person crews. Let's practice like we play. They cut us to 3-person crews. All right, we still got to get that deuce and a half line in service. How are we going to do it? And I still remember, the conversation. Oh my God, that deuce and a half's so heavy. Well, who do you want to do it? The guy from Wrecking Parks, the tow truck driver? That's part of our job. So we got to figure this shit out, how we're going to do this stuff. But, Bobby, you took that same mindset and, with a lot of those people. And Jerry, real quick, if you don't mind, because I'm going to turn it over to Ben here in just a second. I know you're talking a little bit about, that's why I threw that T-shirt up. But, here, there's an oldie but a goodie. I don't know if you remember. Before it was a squad.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Yes, sir.
It doesn't fit me anymore, but it's still cool to have in the collection. You know what I mean? But,
Did you hear the story about me asking them to make T-shirts up when we were first formed as a company?
No, go ahead.
Well, we're a brand new squad company. We didn't even have shirts yet. So I said, gentlemen, think about this. We're an engine company in our first due district, and then past our first alarm district, we respond as a squad. So we do truck work. So let's make up shirts. And of course, the company was located in the West Village, and there's really a connotation to that. It's rather bohemian and whatever else you want to call it. But in any event, I says, okay, blue T-shirts, Maltese Cross, Squad 18, Manhattan. But on the back, we could put a set of irons on one side, a hose and a nozzle on the other side, and right in the middle, we could put our motto. And our motto, we go both ways. To think of how many shirts we could have sold in the neighborhood. out the front door. People will be walking around the streets, sort of a little light in the loafers, but wearing a shirt that says "We go both ways." Forget about it. We could have been millionaires. No, they didn't want to have those shirts made up. What could I say?
Missed opportunity, Chief.
So Ben, they said you were at a meeting, the Skull and Crossbones. Is that where you were earlier?
It was the crochet club.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought it was Skull and Crossbones.
Yeah. No,
you got to be careful. Sometimes those needles get a little sharp, so your fingers get real sensitive. Yeah.
Oh.
And Ben, I apologize. I told everybody that you were coming from your weekly Dungeons and Dragons leader meeting, your Dungeon Master meeting, but I didn't realize it was Crochet Club, so I hope I corrected that for you.
Dungeons and Dragons next week.
Gary, he knitted that shirt himself.
I was going to put a filter on my screen here as a cat, so that halfway through I could say, "I'm not a cat."
So, we're at about an hour and 20 minutes, which typically we wrap up around an hour, but the conversation has been so great, and we just kind of let it roll. And like Chief Tracy had said, you learn from people that are smarter than you. So I certainly wasn't going to stop it, because there was a lot of really good stuff from the time I came in to now. So, so if we could, we'll just kind of go around the horn, our final closing thoughts, and then I'll take us out, if that's cool with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben, if you don't mind, walk me through the process, because as you know, I am technologically challenged, but I did want to throw up a quick picture of Mike McMullen and also Chris Slutman. So let's see, share. Hold on.
Yep. Where do you have the picture, Trevor?
Boom, right there. Can you see it?
No.
Okay.
So click the share down at the bottom.
All right, hold on.
Yeah, screen.
Well, go ahead. I'll figure this out while you're talking, and you come back to me, Ben.
All right, Bobby, what are your final thoughts?
Jerry, I don't think this conversation is done. You should come back again sometime.
Yes.
Okay.
Talk about some more stuff if you're willing to. It's a pleasure to talk to you and hear what you have to say. And I'm sure that we want to hear a lot more about what you have to say in the future too. So, we all share this passion with this firefighting. And, for all of you guys out there that are watching this and kind of got the slugs in your firehouse and stuff like that, you don't need them. Go out in your firehouse, go out in your engine bay, practice putting your gloves on, practice putting your mask on, practice throwing ladders, practice pulling your hose lines. Do your own thing, and then that will actually draw some more people out to do it with you. So get yourself proficient as you possibly can, because it's all about trying to become comfortable in an uncomfortable place. And that's what this job is all about. And if you're trying to be in a comfortable place, the fire service is the wrong place for you, and you need to figure something else out. But thank you very much for coming on, Jerry. It was a blast talking with you. And thank you, Ben and Trevor.
All right, I'm actually back, Ben. I went ahead and, like any good half-ass officer, I went ahead and delegated this to you. So I just emailed you those pictures if you want to go ahead and bring that up. Yeah. But while you're doing that, again, Chief Tracy, I would just really want to thank you not only for coming on tonight, but also just sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us over the years, whether it's been at FDIC, whether it's been at Ocean City, or coming on tonight. We can always gain. And one of the things I always want to pass along to the folks is we have a lot of wisdom and knowledge and experience that walks out our door every day in the fire service, whether that's somebody who's retired, somebody who's passed on, or you just kind of fades away into obscurity. And to try to regain that knowledge, I mean, we have to pay for that in blood, sweat, and tears, literally. And make sure we talk to some of these senior folks in the firehouse, some of our senior men and women, and make sure that we cultivate some of the knowledge from our retirees that they've been there, they've done that, they've already put the sweat equity into it, and they paid their pound of flesh in our industry. So try to make sure that we have those conversations. And I know in the last academy class that I had the privilege of being involved in, we brought the retirees in for a lunch, and for the first hour we told the recruits just to shut up and listen, and for the second hour talk to these guys and gain from some of their experience. They've been there, they've done it, and they'll tell you about their mistakes too, because they're not shy about it. So make sure that we do right in the fire service. Like I said, keep learning, keep progressing, make sure that we're doing the right thing for the right reason. And Chief Tracy, you and I were having a conversation about the purity of the industry, and that's something that I think that as folks that have been in this industry for a while at varying levels, we can really instill that in the generations coming up so they see things through that lens. But Jerry, I really appreciate you taking your time tonight. And Ben, were you able to get those pictures?
Yes, sir.
If you wouldn't mind real quick, before you came on, Ben, we were talking about the really looking at Memorial Day, not only for the kickoff to summer and also the to be able to recognize those people who have made the ultimate sacrifice and service to our country. But this is firefighter paramedic Mike McMullen, also sergeant with the Army National Guard. And, again, he was killed in 2000. Well, he was injured in 2005 and succumbed to those injuries a couple of weeks later in early 2006 in Iraq. And then if you could put up Staff Sergeant Chris Slutman, also a 15-year veteran at FDNY in Ladder 27. And he was killed by a roadside bomb back in 2019, April of 2019. So I know there's many, many more out there, folks in our industry who've lived a life of service, not only as firefighters, but also in service to our country in the military. So again, I just want to thank everybody who has served previously and is currently serving, and of course those who have sacrificed their lives to make our country what it is today and make things better for us. So again, thank you everybody, and we'll send it over to Chief Tracy for his final words.
Hey, thank you, and God bless you for bringing up those firefighter servicemen. God bless them. We shall never forget. Earlier we were talking, and I had made the comment, I could teach you, but I can't understand it for you. Einstein was quoted once by saying, if when you're explaining something, if you can't explain it to an 8-year-old, you don't know the subject good enough. And we're not talking about dumbing anything down, but we're saying if you can explain it in the terms that somebody could understand it, they'll get it. And really, that's what that's all about. So try not to make things so complicated. And it's all about sharing. Thank you very much for this opportunity, gentlemen. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.
So some closing thoughts. And again, I was fortunate. I was able to do a lot of listening through all of that. But one of the things that I remember that was on conversation when I first tuned in was talking about mentoring. And there was something, I can't remember where it was posted. I was looking for it. It was on social media. But it said, if they suck, mentor them. I said, and if you don't mentor them, or if you don't, then you suck. So don't suck. Right?
Atkinson said that, Kirk.
Yeah. So mentor the probie. Mentor as the senior fireman. Mentor that person to take your spot. You're the chauffeur wherever you are. As you're the company officer, as you move up, you have to mentor your replacement. That's just how it is. Take care of the people that you work with, and help them achieve the things that you have. That's how the fire service works. So, with that being said, we're gonna. The one other thing I wanted to mention was we always talk about having that go-get-it attitude and that mindset of we're going in. We talk a lot about this, and we always reference Chief Doug Scott, which we're trying to get to come on. But we've always quoted him as he wants the crew to be bulldogs. He wants that company officer is holding their leash, and he doesn't want to have to push them with that leash because one, you can't. But he wants to be able to let them go. Aggressive interior attack, going to do the job, going to put the fire out, and then pull them back if he has to. As the officer, if he sees things are going from sugar to shit, he can pull them back, reevaluate, and go from there. But he and I think this is a great analogy. He wants that.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, oh yeah.
No. What you say? He can pull them back. No. Oh yeah. Sometimes that's the problem. Pulling them back. Mm-hmm. Chief, I got this. We got this. Yeah, and it's out 27 windows over your head. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're good, Chief.
But sometimes that's the issue, pulling them back. They have to respect you to the point where if you say, all right, gentlemen, let's go, you're out. that they'll actually come.
Yeah.
There you go.
And Chief, real quick, and Ben, I don't mean to belabor this, but I call Chief Tracy, I call that the rule of twos, that as soon as you say, hey, I need you to pull back out, hey, Chief, I need 2 more minutes, and they're 2 feet closer to the building than you said they should be, and then there's 2 more guys on the line than there were before. So it's the rule of twos across the board, but they're firemen. What are they going to do?
Exactly.
So, all right, we'll finish wrapping this up. Thirsty Thursday, we are back June 10th. We're going to be changing up our programs for the summer. We're going to once a month. So June 10th will be the only Thirsty Thursday in June. And then as we go back into the fall, we're going to try and change our format again. Thirsty Thursday with a special guest 1 day a month, and then start looking at offering some of the Strike the Box classes online. So again, like I said, June 10th we'll be back. Chief Tracy, I know we have talked prior to all of this. You have a book that's going for review on high-rise operations. So when you see that, that's going to be by Fire Engineering and Penwell, correct?
Yes. The title, High-Rise Buildings, Understanding the Challenge.
Okay. So folks, as you guys are out there, as you're checking their website, seeing what kind of stuff they have coming out, be on the watch out for that. As you can tell from the conversation tonight, Chief Tracy is a wealth of knowledge, a great resource. So I know I'm looking forward to the book, and I'll be picking that up as soon as I can. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate everybody's tuning in. Chief Tracy, again, we appreciate you coming on and joining us. We will definitely try and get you back on if you're interested and available. But other than that, hope everybody has a safe and wonderful weekend. Enjoy remember the reason for this weekend. Like Trevor had said, it's for those that have passed, and keep them in your thoughts as we move forward. So thank you. Good night and stay safe.
God bless you.